the indigenous peoples off their land, off Turtle Island, the name many tribes use to refer to North America and the Earth. We'll start by acknowledging the peoples whose territories we are occupying as we gather here. The Susquehannocks, the Lenape, also known as the Delaware, and the Haudenosaunee, also called the Iroquois League or Six Nations. Through this practice, we can also honor the indigenous people of this land. We're here to support our Asian American and Asian community members, to give voice to our anguish about the assaults on this community, to grieve the loss of life due to hate, and to work to create a beloved community. Our first speaker is Professor Sheila Jane Menon. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. Clap once if you can hear me. Clap twice if you can hear me. My name is Sheila Jane Menon, and I'm a faculty member in English at Dickinson College, where I teach Asian American and world literature. I'm speaking today as someone whose training and teaching is grounded in the work of Asian American writers and literary critics, historians and sociologists, activists and artists. There are many of them, and these Asian American voices have never been silent. I'm also speaking as an Asian immigrant to this country, as a Malaysian Indian raised in Malaysia, Singapore, and Honolulu. These specifics matter because my particular South Asian and Southeast Asian identity do not make me a target of this wave of anti-Asian racism. To begin to respond to what is happening to our Asian American friends and neighbors, we have to be clear and accurate in our terminology. The current surge in hate crimes is targeting Asians and Asian Americans, especially those who are perceived as having East Asian heritage. We cannot afford to collapse racial categories. Asian American and Pacific Islander are separate designations that cover distinct and diverse ethnic communities. We cannot afford to mischaracterize who exactly is being targeted and impacted. In Atlanta, on March 16th, the targets included Chinese and Korean American women. Tao Yo Feng, 54, dreamed of returning to China and opening her own beauty salon. The youngest and most headstrong of her siblings, she migrated to the US at the age of 23, knowing little English, yet determined to help support her family. She had hoped to move back to China last year, but the pandemic delayed those plans. Instead, she continued doing what she'd done throughout her 2 decades in the States, sending money home to her family and staying in daily contact with them. Xiao Chia Tan, 49, was 1 week away from her 50th birthday. Originally from the Chinese city of Nanning, the US had been her home for 15 years. Her 29-year-old daughter, Jamie Webb, was looking forward to celebrating this milestone birthday with strawberry cream cake, her mother's favorite. Tan had raised her daughter while co-parenting with her ex-husband and launching 2 businesses. Friends and family described Tan as, quote, an ambitious worker and caring friend who dreamed of traveling. Hyun Chung Grant, 51, was the mother of 2 sons. She moved her small family from Seattle to Atlanta over a decade ago, drawn to the vibrant Korean community there. She loved disco music, Korean dramas, and horror films. Her eldest son, Randy Park, is 23 and now responsible for raising his younger brother. He remembers his mother as, quote, one of my best friends and the strongest influence on who we are today. Young-ae Yu, 63, was a native of Seoul, South Korea. She loved cooking and karaoke and was a devoted mother to her two sons, Elliot and Robert Peterson. She had moved to the U.S. in the 1980s with her then husband. Since their divorce, she remained a constant presence in her sons' lives and held various jobs to support herself and her sons. She is remembered by her children and grandchildren as a devoted, loving, and generous woman who had a profound impact on their lives. Sun Cha Kim, 69, was a mother of two, a grandmother of three, a wife to her husband of 50 years, and a woman who loved line dancing. Her granddaughter, Regina Song, describes Kim as, quote, a fighter. She was pure-hearted and the most selfless woman I know. She represented everything I wanted to be as a woman. Regina recalls that her grandmother never failed to call her weekly, offering always the same words of encouragement. Quote, stay strong in life. When you're happy, I'm happy. Sun Chung Park, 74, moved to the U.S. 4 decades ago, determined to eventually bring her 5 children over from Korea. After working multiple jobs, eventually gaining her citizenship, and navigating the immigration bureaucracy, she succeeded in bringing each child over individually between the 1990s and the 2000s. Her son-in-law, Scott Lee, remembers her generosity and warmth, her incredible kimchi dumplings, and her devotion to supporting their family. Since March 16th, and since this pandemic began, attacks against Asian Americans and women especially have been ongoing. From Manhattan to Los Angeles, from San Francisco to Houston and beyond, anti-Asian hate crimes surged by almost 150% in 2020. Recent reports suggest the numbers are even higher. 68% of these underreported crimes target Asian American women. News coverage has rightly noted that Trump's xenophobic rhetoric and policies have fueled the surge in anti-Asian racism. But the origins of this hatred stretch back much farther. As the Asian and Asian American Student Collective at Dickinson College noted in their statement following the shootings in Atlanta, quote, this pandemic did not create the racialized misogyny and anti-Asian racism that our communities are experiencing today. The Chinese Exclusion Act and the internment of Japanese Americans are only a few of the anti-Asian policies that have vilified those of Asian descent long before the pandemic. These policies establish the stereotype of Asians as both yellow peril and model minority, and fueled the hypersexualization of Asian women. The students continue. Anti-Asian racism is part of a larger system that rewards a fictionalized collective Asian American success. This stereotype generalizes highly diverse Asian American communities while weaponizing us against other communities of color, especially our African American brothers and sisters. And that's where I end the excerpt from the Asian American Student Collective at Dickinson. This history of racism and state violence, of fear-mongering and misogyny is interwoven with an equally long history of Asian American activism and advocacy. Asian Americans have been vocal participants in the civic life of this country. They have led pivotal 19th and 20th century lawsuits on citizenship and racial identity that defines what it means to be American. They have joined the farm labor and civil rights movements. They have stood in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. None of these efforts have been without their own tensions, but this history exists. It continues to shape Asian American communities and Asian American activism today. Asian Americans have not been silent. To understand these histories is to recognize the complexity of Asian American communities and their place in this country. But we need more than just understanding and education. We need actions that are grounded in these histories to provide meaningful crisis intervention systems, to invest in transformative justice, to build robust mental health resources, and so much more. We need partners in that work. We cannot and should not have to do it alone. Thank you.
Penn State Dickinson Law student Harvey Ahn.
Thank you all for being here together. My name is Yang Han, but I usually go by Harvey. I'm an international student at Penn State Dickinson Law. I'm from South Korea. But because of my appearance, contribute this community for the better, for the solid, for the just community. First, I will read a statement as a law student. My law school colleague wrote a draft and he's in New Mexico, so I will be his voice. Next, I will read a poem from Asian Americans' perspective. I wrote that poem. Let me speak. America has always struggled with racism, hate, misogyny, and gun violence. There have been already over 100 mass shootings this year. Gun legislation is in Congress again. Maybe this time there will be a change. The hate speech against Asian Americans has encouraged individuals to act more aggressively than ever. Asian Americans have been speaking up since last year, but after a year now, media is finally covering attacks. Like as if this just started this year, but that's not the truth. Asian Americans have been speaking up for nearly 100 years, and it is time for the country to listen. We have a history of systemic racism and exclusion, and we have a long way to go. It's been slow, but awareness and openness that a problem does exist is a start. The United States justice system has not taken violence against Asian Americans seriously, although actually it has allowed those who committed violence against Asian Americans to go unnoticed. It actually has allowed those who have been targeted, harassed, bullied, and killed to be unheard. We must call on our elected officials and police officers to act on and take the violence seriously. Our communities must be aware of the harm done to their citizens. We must call for its end and hold accountable those who inflicted harm. Allyship is important for all of us. Right now, 28 states are considering anti-trans bills. As you know, racism, hate, and discrimination affect all of us. We must be more open to learn, listen, communicate, and educate so we can make a difference. I believe in meaningful policy, accountability, and consequences for hateful acts. Finally, it's important for people to know by words and actions that have support and they are seen. Too often, we are uncomfortable talking about race, discrimination, and hate. Just showing up to this event here today together, reaching out to your Asian friends to check in on them, or speaking up when you see something wrong. Thank you all for being here together. I will read my poem, the title, Declaration of Interdependence. Dear the United States of America, you big giant, we Asian Americans are you, and you, the United States of America, are us. Dear the United States of America, you big giant, we are your fathers, mothers, brothers, and sisters. Dear the United States of America, you big giant, we are your neighbors, friends, and colleagues. Dear the United States of America, you big giant, we are your arms, legs, and heart. Dear the United States of America, you big giant, you're poisoned, you're blind, you're deaf, you're hurting yourself. Dear the United States of America, you big giant, whenever you face challenges, you slashed us, you trampled us, and you renounced us. But we, Asian Americans, are you, and you, the United States of America, are us. Dear the United States of America, you big giant, we respect you, we follow you, we serve you with courtesy. But you misunderstand our civility as passiveness, cowardness, enervation. You're poisoned, you're blind, you're deaf. We Asian Americans are you, and you, the United States of America, are us. Dear the United States of America, you big giant, we were waiting for you to stop poisoning you. Open your eyes, listen to our voices. Dear the United States of America, you big giant, it is not you. Stop poisoning you, open your eyes, listen to yourself. We Asian Americans are you, and you, the United States of America, are us. Dear the United States of America, you big giant, stop poisoning you. We can help you. Open your eyes, we will be your eyes. Listen to yourself, we will be your voice. We Asian Americans are you, and you, the United States of America, are us. Dear the United States of America, we will not be silent anymore. We will help you. We Asian Americans are you, and you, the United States of America, are us. We love you. Thank you.
Carlisle Mayor Tim Scott.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see so many people out, especially so many young people. I think about 30 years ago I was a young person, but not anymore. But thank you anyway, and I am here to say to you in no unequivocal terms that your elected and appointed leaders of Carlisle Borough condemn all forms of hate, racism, violence, xenophobia, and discrimination against Asian Americans, period. But as we know, those actions and those words aren't enough. So here's what I need you folks to do. I need you to use your Google machine, and I want you to look up legislation relating to hate crimes, all hate crimes, legislation relating to expanding civil rights for victims of discrimination. And I want you to write those bill numbers down, and I want you to contact your leaders in Harrisburg and in Washington, D.C., and demand that they take a stand. And I want you to write them, I want you to email them, and when it's safe, I want you to go to their offices and sit in their offices until they see you and talk to you. It's not enough just to come to these. These are great. I want to thank Carlisle CAN and the Greater Carlisle Responders Network for organizing this march, but we need direct action, people. We're good here at the borough. We've got a wonderful Human Relations Commission, but more needs to be done on a state and national level, and that's where you come in. So please do that, and if you don't know who any of these people are that are your leaders in Harrisburg and Washington, email me, and I'm happy to send you their contact information. So on behalf of Borough Council, my Deputy Mayor, Sean Schultz, who's right there, I think Paula Bazard from the school board was here. Are there any other elected leaders in Cumberland County? Yes, yeah, all these people. Pay attention. They're here. They're for you. The people that aren't, they're not. Thank you very much.
Wanda Hunter of the Carlisle Human Relations Commission.
Good evening, Carlisle.
Good evening.
My name is Wanda Hunter. I've been a resident of Carlisle all of my 80 years. I stand in solidarity with the Asian and Asian American community. As a member of the human race, we all bleed the same red blood, regardless of the color of our skin or what country we are from. The Borough of Carlisle Human Relations Commission was created by an ordinance on December 8, 2016, which became effective on March 1st, 2017. The HRC fosters equality for all citizens, regardless of race, color, religious creed, or ancestry. We pledge to safeguard the rights of all persons to remain free from discrimination or discriminatory practices. The HRC is independent and nonpartisan. I am one of the 4 commissioners appointed by the borough for a 4-year term. We are residents or business owners in the borough, and we serve without compensation. We can be your first line of defense to execute duties prior to the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. We at the HRC receive complaints and conduct intake meetings of persons aggrieved by a practice that is unlawful. The HRC is a mediating body. We are located at 53 Southwest Street here in Carlisle. If interested, brochures are available, which you may share with your family and friends. We support the Asian and Asian American community. Thank you.
Reverend Jan Bai, Chaplain, Shippensburg University.
Good afternoon. My name is Jan Bai, and I'm the United Campus Minister at Shippensburg University. And I am also the parent of a Vietnamese-born daughter. Shippensburg, down the road, is not a bastion of diversity. And over the years, she has run into her share of racism in that community. She's been asked, when not paying attention, what was wrong with you? Don't you speak English? She's been harassed both racially and sexually in front of our home. She's married to a Korean American. I do not know why I am intoxicating the... Is that better? That work? Maybe that's it. To a Korean American. My grandson is Asian American. I was heartbroken as she grew up and she would see other Asians on television and asked, where are they from? Because she didn't think they were Americans. She questioned her own self because other people questioned whether Asians were Americans. This fight is personal. This fight is heartfelt. And I ask you if you will join with me in this prayer. Spirit of life and love, in our efforts to dismantle racism, we understand that we struggle not merely against flesh and blood, but against powers and institutions. Those institutions and systems that keep racism alive by perpetuating the lie that some members of the family are inferior and others superior. Create in us a new mind and heart that will enable us to see brothers and sisters in the faces of those divided by racial categories. Give us the grace and the strength to rid ourselves of racial stereotypes that oppress some of us while providing entitlements to others. Help us to create a community and a nation that embraces the hopes and fears of oppressed peoples of color where we live, as well as those around the world. Heal your family, Creator of all. Make us one. We need your strength to step beyond blindness, indifference, and fear, to step toward those whom we have overlooked. We may not be able to make grandiose promises or plans today, because those are easily broken and forgotten. But this we know, we cannot be the same, and we will not be the same. And in remembrance of all those who have suffered and died, we will change not only ourselves, but our communities, our country, and our world. I invite you now, in a moment of silence, to bring honor to those who have lost their lives, to those who fight this struggle, to those who have been harmed, that they might find dignity. We remember. Amen.
Marsha Berry, racial justice activist.
evening, dear human family.
Good evening.
First, I want to say to my dear brothers and sisters who come from the many lineages, languages, circumstances, and rich, diverse cultures that are called Asian, our hearts are broken and our hearts are with you. We are here to say that when one member of our family is injured, we are all injured. The lives of these 6 dear sisters and these 2 men killed in Atlanta, their deaths touch us and speak to us. What I hope they say to us is that we must come together. We must stand together. We must speak the truth about the poison root of white supremacy. I'd like to quote Reverend William Barber, one of the leaders of the Poor People's Campaign, who said, "White supremacy is never just against black people, but against humanity itself. White supremacy is a lie teller and a life taker. And if it is left unchallenged by truth and justice and love, it will take the life of innocent Asian women. It will take the life of unarmed black men, women, boys, and girls. It will take the life of Latino parents and children at the U.S. border." Now, some of you may be saying, why do you have to call it white supremacy? This term is jarring for some people. Let's take a minute to name it, define it, and say why it's important. I'm here to say it's important that we call it white supremacy. It's important to identify the root cause of any disease, especially racism. Allow me to take a moment to say a few specific things to people who are racialized as white. Let's say what we mean by white supremacy. We're not talking about hate groups or extremists. We're not only talking about individuals who commit violent acts. We're talking about a system, and it's important that white people recognize it, understand it, and call it out. It's a system, a whole web of interlocking institutions reinforcing one another. We're talking about a socio-political economic system of domination based on racial hierarchies, a system that benefits those defined and perceived as white. This system rests on the historical and current accumulation of structural power that privileges and elevates white people as a group. Friends, if we don't understand that racism is systemic, we guarantee it will continue. If we can't identify it, we can't interrupt it. The term white supremacy makes the power relationship clear. White people should name it because it shifts the so-called race problem to us, where it belongs. It also serves to highlight the nature of the lifelong work that uniquely belongs to white people. And while our work may be different based on how we're positioned in a racialized system, this is lifelong work for all of us. I want to say that again. This is lifelong work for all of us. This system has always had a divide and conquer strategy, pitting racial and ethnic groups against one another. We all have to be smarter. We all have to be stronger. We all have to increase our level of awareness and understanding so that we can't be manipulated by a system that seeks to divide. That's why we're working to build beloved community in Carlisle and central Pennsylvania. That's why the Carlisle Borough is creating a truth and reconciliation process. That's why we're working to build broad, deep coalitions standing together. I'm grateful to be here among a community that cares and is striving to learn. And I'm especially grateful to see all the young people from Dickinson College and the community here today. And I want to take a moment just to say, there are so many people in our generation who are losing hope and falling into despair. And I just want to say, look around at these young people. These are our future leaders. And any time that I start to lose hope, all I have to do is just spend a couple of days around young people and I'm restored again. So thank you so much for being here. And gratitude can ground us so that we can face and honor the pain of what's happening to so many of our brothers and sisters. I have a friend in Brooklyn. She's Korean American, and she has a beautiful toddler boy. It's spring. The weather is beautiful. She won't take him for a stroll in the park, not without her husband or someone accompanying her now. Imagine that. Or imagine one of your family members being afraid to go out alone, even to the grocery store. I'm sure many of you have seen the horrible, violent images of these beautiful Asian grandmothers and grandfathers being pushed and shoved to the ground, kicked, punched, and spit on. What keeps people from seeing these lovely Asian elders as their own grandmothers and grandfathers? So we are here to say that we grieve with you. And I want to briefly speak to our collective grief. I know none of us like to feel pain, but it helps to remember that grief is a symbol of our interconnectedness. Experiencing grief means that you care deeply. You've lost something or someone that you love. It's a healthy, natural response to these tragic events. So honor your pain. Don't shut it down. Don't push it away, and don't allow yourself to get isolated. The best way to liberate pain is in community. Let your pain move you to a deeper sense of connection and compassion. We're living in a world that systematically values and devalues human worth based on racial hierarchies. That's painful. The devaluing of certain lives based on racial hierarchies puts people into categories where they are considered and treated as other. John Chin, the executive director of the Philadelphia Chinatown Development Corporation, said, "When it's convenient, we point to Asians as a model minority, which deepens the divide between Asian and Black communities." And Director Chin said, "And when it's inconvenient, you point to us as other." Look what happens when we allow white supremacy to succeed in othering members of our human family. Asian Americans are treated as perpetual outsiders, perpetual foreigners, no matter how many generations they've been here. They're often viewed as a monolith, stereotyped, and scapegoated, rather than seeing the full depth, breadth, and complexity of these diverse communities and cultures. That natural human capacity we all have for empathy, that's something that white supremacy completely cuts off. We have community feelings, feelings for the world, feelings for each other. It's built into ourselves. We have to do the work of building solidarity from that place. The place in all of us that knows love is stronger than hate. The place that naturally grieves when we witness injury. The place of love and compassion and kindness. So now let's turn our attention and our voices to our Asian and Asian American sisters and brothers. More than anything, I want to say, I hear you. I see you. You are not alone, and you belong. Can we raise all our voices? Can you say these words after me? We hear you. We hear you. We see you. We see you. You are not alone. You are not alone. You belong. You belong. You all sound so beautiful. So finally, I want to apologize for my voice taking up so much space here. I kept pushing back when I was asked to speak today, but the organizers felt that given Carlisle's history and Carlisle's demographics, it was important to have a white person speak the truth about white supremacy, and to make sure we connect all the dots when these tragic events occur. Let's leave here and devote time to hearing Asian voices, to learning about the rich beauty and diversity of Asian cultures and accomplishments, the history of Asian immigration, and the history of anti-Asian racism and discrimination. Friends, let us continue to link arms and stand with one another. There is no such thing as a neutral stance. Words matter and have consequences. Actions and inactions matter. So let's do this work at the level of hearts and minds. Let's do this work at the level of policy and advocacy. Let's do this work to create equity, equality, and justice, to nurture and protect life, and to keep on doing it until such time as everyone is treated with dignity, respect, justice, and love. I'll leave you with the words of a couple of wise ones. First, Korean American Philadelphia Council member David O., and by the way, he's Dickinson College alumni. Councilman O said, "Stand up for your own values, for what you believe in. Stand up for all, without agenda, not selectively." And the great Japanese-American peace activist Yuri Kochiyama reminds us we are all part of one another. Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for coming. This is a call to action and commitment. Remember that May is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Week, so there's a lots of opportunity for learning, doing, and committing. And let me leave you with this one thought. If not us, then who? If not now, then when? Thank you.
Amazingly enough.